Good morning. My name is Dan Cicala, and on behalf of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware, I welcome you to our online service. For visual accessibility, I'm a white man with salt and pepper hair, wearing a gray turtleneck and a very big, cozy wool sweater today. First Unitarian is a church that welcomes everyone in any condition. Even when the weather is unwelcoming, you are welcome. Even in our absence, we are here for you. No matter the climate, political or otherwise, there is space for you here. And as much as we miss you and would love to see you, we do encourage people to turn cameras and audio off to make sure that we have a smooth service today. If you're new to First U and you'd like to get our newsletter and other information, there should be a link in the chat to sign up for our e-news. And now let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide.
Good morning. I'm Edris Harrell, a worship associate here at First U, but I am leading the service today. I'm a white woman with brown hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a gray turtleneck sweater. Today, we will be talking about Helen Keller. She is such a fascinating figure for me, and there is a lot more I wish I could share with you about her than would fit in a sermon. Helen Keller was a socialist for a time until she became impatient with them, wanting a bigger fight for faster change. Much of her ideals and writings were ignored during her lifetime and after because people did not think she was capable of having such opinions, and they assumed either her teacher, Annie Sullivan, was speaking for her, or that she was unduly influenced, or they just wanted to consider her an uncomplicated inspiration. Like many people with disabilities, Keller's abilities were underestimated. For the call to worship, I'll be reading from Helen Keller's book called My Religion. She refers to her teacher, Miss Sullivan, in this passage. I can only say that the Word of God, freed from the blots and stains of barbarous creeds, has been at once the joy and good of my life, wonderfully linked with my growing appreciation of my teacher's work and my own responsibilities of service, hours of struggle and solitude, hours of deepest joy, harsh truths faced squarely, and high dreams held dearer than the pleasant baits of ease and complacence. Those truths have been to my faculties what light, color, and music are to the eye and ear. They have lifted my wistful longing for a fuller sense life into a vivid consciousness of the complete being within me. Each day comes to me with both hands full of possibilities, and in its brief course, I discern all the verities and realities of my existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, and the spirit of beauty. And now Dan will light the chalice.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me by lighting it to these words by Reverend Michelle Collins. Welcome all who are restless for a world renewed. We come carried by ancestors who refused the silence of despair and dared to sing a new song. Their courage whispers through us still. Today we resist by showing up together. We resist by keeping faith with what is not yet. Our gathering is itself an act of sacred descent, calling us to rise and unite as co-creators of a freer tomorrow. Now please feel free to join in singing the hymn, Sing for Justice.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Hall, and I'm wearing a black sweater and standing near an orchid and a chalice. I invite you to sing with me, Sing for Justice, which the words were written by Brennan Blue of Minneapolis, and the tune is that of All Through the Night, the Welsh folk song, and it comes from the Justice Choir Songbook. All who want peace, sing for justice, join in the call. Justice is love's public story, open to all. Harmony is born of difference, notes and chords of lived experience. All who want peace, sing for justice, join in the call. If you want peace, sing for justice, gather in song. Here we join with friends and strangers, all may belong. justice gather in song. We who want peace work for justice, so shall we grow. We will work to see the day when all may be whole, naming truths while burdens bearing, singing, sharing, learning, caring. We who want peace work for justice, so shall we grow.
Please join me from home in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Before I read the prayer, I want to pause to recognize many of us are reeling from witnessing on video yet another death at the hands of ICE. I pray the videos taken will eventually lead to justice. Let us also pray that those who have suffered around the world, with or without witness, including Gaza and Iran, that they will also one day see justice served and find healing. I'll now read the prayer from Reverend Rebecca Savage. Spirit of life, eternal mystery that holds us close, receive the meditations of our heart this day. We come together in this quiet moment to unify our hearts again towards the clarion call of our time. May justice and equity guide us to greater connection, a greater truth. Our part is just as great, to approach dismantling systems of oppression within us in order for us all to be free. To know that when I cherish and tend to the divine spark within me, when I know in my bones that I am worthy of love and whole just as I am, that there is a greater potential for mutual understanding and care. Love is not scarce. Our ability to extend compassion and grace can be. I place my hand over my heart and know I can feel the spirit of life within me. I invite you to place your hand over your heart and feel the spirit of life within you. The spirit of life is divine within us. The spirit of life is here. This is the beginning of justice and equity when we go within in order to be of service in our communities and our world. May it be so. Amen.
Hold my hope, 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 hold my, hold my trembling, 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 hold my trembling heart. Teach me to be loved. Hold my trembling, hold
Teach me to be loved.
hold my trembling,
Hold my trembling, hold my trembling, hold my trembling, hold my trembling,
hold my trembling, hold my trembling, hold my trembling, hold my trembling, hold my trembling, hold my trembling, hold my hold my hope, hold my hold my hope, hold my hold my hope, hold my hope.
I'll be reading from Helen Keller's book, My Religion, again. Once affliction was looked upon as punishment from God, a burden to be borne passively and piously. The only idea of helping the victims of misfortune was to shelter them and leave them to meditate and live as contentedly as possible in the valley of the shadow. But now we understand that sequestered life without aspiration enfeebles the spirit. It is exactly the same as with the body. The muscles must be used or they lose their strength. If we do not go out of our limited experience somehow and use our memory, understanding, and sympathy, they become inactive. It is by fighting the limitations, temptations, and failures of the world that we reach our highest possibilities. Sick or well, blind or seeing, bond or free, we are here for a purpose, and however we are situated, we please God better with useful deeds than with many prayers or pious resignation. The temple or church is empty unless the good of life fills it. It is not the stone walls that make it small or large, but the brave soul's light shining round about. The altar is holy if only it represents the altar of our heart upon which we offer the only sacrifices ever commanded, the love that is stronger than hate and the faith that overcometh doubt. Most of us have learned a little bit about Helen Keller. She was a deaf-blind girl who surprised us with her intelligence once she learned to communicate. She was a lesson to the public that people can overcome almost any obstacle. And we have been gifted with many inspirational quotes from her, such as, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." But she remained a two-dimensional person to the public, even as an adult, and we did not learn about her passionate politics and radical ideas. We were not fed her quotes on the problems with capitalism and the greed of the rich, like this one, for example. The ownership of the world by a small class is the main cause of poverty. If we read what has been ignored for so long, we can see that Keller demonstrated values that many Unitarian Universalists hold, and that she was impatient to change our country to become a more equitable one. Through her speeches and writings, including at least a dozen books, Keller effected changes in the world and the United States that improved the lives of people. For example, she helped to change medical practices to prevent blindness, raised millions of dollars for the American Federation for the Blind, worked to establish one standard Braille system in the world. Keller had learned to read 5 different types of raised print. And she convinced Congress to include blind people in Social Security financial assistance and to fund Braille books in libraries. She also wrote and advocated for other marginalized groups, argued against wars and for the working people they exploited, promoted economic reforms and birth control, and she was a co-founder of the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. She was a force. On the night of her movie premiere, where she was supposed to give a speech, Keller instead stood on the picket line with the actors who were on strike. And Keller is a human, which comes with complications, mistakes, areas of growth, the influence of the time and those around her, and of course, her own mind. And to me, that's what makes her story so interesting. So I'm going to ask now that the first photograph of Keller be displayed. In this photo, she's an 8-year-old white girl sitting on a chair in profile, holding a doll in her lap with her teacher Annie Sullivan, a white woman, sitting on the grass next to her. To start at the beginning, Keller was born in Alabama in 1880. She suffered from either scarlet fever or meningitis when she was 19 months old, which left her blind and deaf. Her behavior after her illness was very challenging, as she would have frequent tantrums and become aggressive. Some relatives said she was, quote, a mental defective. However, Keller had actually developed about 60 hand signs on her own to label her family members, objects, or her needs. Her behavior was a result of her frustration with not being able to communicate or connect with others. Keller's teacher, Annie Sullivan, joined Keller's family just before Keller turned 7 years old, and they remained together the rest of Sullivan's life. She taught Keller the manual alphabet, and then she spelled in Keller's hand to interpret conversations, lectures, books, newspapers, etc. She also taught Keller how to read raised letters in Braille and how to write. Keller became famous around the age of 8 due to educators writing about her astounding progress. With Sullivan's interpretation, Keller attended high school in Massachusetts and then Radcliffe College, where Keller became the first deafblind person in the country to receive a Bachelor of Arts degree. When Keller was 16 years old, she was introduced to Swedenborgian, or the New Church, and she was a follower of the church for the rest of her life. Aspects of the new church that Keller valued were a belief in a universal God, that love was the center of religion, that one could not have faith without also doing good works, and that heaven was an extension of one's spiritual life, where she would be with those she loved and without disabilities. So now if we can see the next photo of Keller as a middle-aged woman. Keller did not believe that Christianity was the only one true religion. She wrote, I had been told by narrow people that all who were not Christians would be punished, and naturally my soul revolted, since I knew of wonderful men who lived and died for truth as they saw it in the pagan lands. In her book, My Religion, Keller wrote that there was, quote, a more generous understanding that God has other sheep who hear his voice and obey him. He has provided religion of some kind everywhere, and it does not matter to what race or creed anyone belongs if he is faithful to his ideals of right living. The one principle to be remembered by all is that religion is to live a doctrine, not merely to believe one. Keller believed most religions serve the same God, and that serving God through whichever religion was more important than establishing which religious beliefs were best. As a result, Keller frequently spoke out against anti-Semitism. In 1919, Henry Ford began publishing a weekly newspaper that blamed Jews for everything wrong in the United States. Keller was one of the first persons of notoriety to call for a stop to it. In a letter to the Jewish Advocate, she wrote, one has only to glance at these slanders to see that they are the work of ignorant persons who set themselves the ignoble task of keeping alive in men's minds hostilities and prejudices which originated in times far removed from the present. In 1933, in the first year of Hitler's dictatorship, she had a letter published in the New York Times to Hitler and the student body of Germany, criticizing them for burning books, including hers, and for their treatment of Jews. Keller would go on 9 world tours, embarking on many international trips, particularly after World War II, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki 3 years after they were destroyed by the atomic bomb. At that time, Keller and Eleanor Roosevelt were considered the most valuable goodwill ambassadors by the U.S. State Department. Keller primarily advocated for the blind in the countries that she visited, not only to provide them services, but economic and educational opportunities, as well as fair labor practices for all the working class. In her later years, Keller was known to have a diversity of people at her dinner parties, including people of color, with disabilities, or who were openly gay. She was not fair to all ethnic groups, however. During World War II, Keller wrote a lovely letter to a student at a school for the blind named after her, located in an internment camp for the Japanese in the US. She did not, however, criticize the existence of the internment camps. And in her support of the formation of Israel, she made racist comments about Palestinians. I would like to think that if Keller was a woman of today's time, she would have criticized Israel's oppression of the Palestinians, especially the atrocities they are committing now, though admittedly, I am projecting. Returning to Keller's faith, she wrote in her book, My Religion, religion has been defined as the science of our relations to God and to our fellow men and what we owe to ourselves. Surely Christianity, rightly understood, is the science of love. When the Lord dwelt upon earth visible to mortals, he declared that on two commandments, love of God and love of the neighbor, hang all the law and the prophets. Keller is saying that all of the rules and expectations of Christianity are based on loving God and loving others. Nothing can be done in the name of religion without those two pillars of love supporting the action. That quote is all the more timely now, as Christian nationalists seem to be erasing love from their doctrine. At the same time, Unitarian Universalists have put love at the very center of our values. And I like thinking of religion as a science of love. It is not a contrast to the other sciences, rather a complement. But Keller recognized that many religious followers and leaders twist and distort the teachings of their religion to justify immoral acts. Keller believed that humans had two distinct births, the birth into existence and the birth into life. The birth of babies is what she refers to as the birth into existence. The birth into life is not sudden, but rather a change that comes over us. Quote, therefore, we should not think of conversion as the acceptance of a particular creed, but as a change of heart. It is the soul turning away from the ignoble instincts which tempt us to feel, think, speak, and act for mere self-interest and the good opinion of the world, and finding joy in the unselfish love of God and a life of usefulness to others above all things. Keller is saying that to become a follower of a religion is not necessarily coming to accept certain beliefs. Instead, being born again is to find joy in the love of God and to commit to a lifetime of doing good in the name of God. Keller's life seemed to be propelled by finding joy in a life of usefulness. At age 27, she wrote an article for the Ladies' Home Journal to talk about a blindness in infants called ophthalmio-neonatorum, caused by the mother having an infection in the birth canal during birth. This could be prevented by putting drops of silver nitrate into the newborn's eyes, but the topic was so taboo that it was not discussed between parents and doctors. Keller wrote cautiously and with innuendos, without much success. So she tried again the following year, this time being much more forthright. Quote, must we leave young girls to meet the danger in the dark because we dare not turn the light upon our social wickedness? False delicacy and prudery must give place to precise information and common sense. In 1903, a quarter of the students at the School for the Blind that Keller attended had been blinded by ophthalmio-neonatorum. Keller wrote her articles in 1907 and 1908. By 1913, only one new student entered the same school with blindness caused by ophthalmio-neonatorum. Keller recognized that withholding information from science due to a sense of morals intact was ineffective. People deserved to be told the truth so they could make choices that were best for themselves and their children. Keller learned another major cause of blindness and other disabilities were industrial accidents. Business owners, in an effort to cut costs, did not provide safe working conditions for their employees, allowing them to be severely injured for the sake of profit. Keller came around to blaming capitalism for blindness. This started her campaign to end poverty and to promote socialism. In one writing, she rhetorically asked what caused poverty, and she responded, simply this, that the land, the machinery, the means of life belong to a few, while the many are born and live with nothing that they can call their own except their hands and their brains. The ownership of the world by a small class is the main cause of poverty. Our blind guides consoled us by saying that there was much charity and that the rich were generous and gave to the poor. We now see that what the rich give is only a small part of the money which is made for them by the labor of the poor. They never stop to think that if the workers received an equitable share of their product, there would be no rich, there would be little need of philanthropy. Charity covers a multitude of sins. It does something worse than that. It covers the facts so that they cannot be seen. It covers the fact that the property of the few is made by the labor of the many. The rich are willing to do everything for the poor but to get off their backs. Keller saw the inequality of the U.S. economy during the Second Industrial Revolution, and her quote is all the more relevant now. Her teacher, Annie Sullivan, would point out to Keller that they benefited from the wealthy. While Keller did not ask people to financially support her, others, such as Mark Twain, would do so on her behalf. She received a monthly pension from Andrew Carnegie, sugar stock from John S. Spalding, and railroad shares from various people, for example. Keller felt the fact that she received money for businesses she had no knowledge about proved her point. Even her fundraising efforts for the American Federation for the Blind were examples of the problems of capitalism. She wrote, I regard philanthropy as a tragic apology for the wrong conditions under which human beings live, losing their sight or hearing or becoming impoverished. And I do not conceal this awkward position from anybody. Many socialists at that time looked at the class issue as a whole and ignored racial issues in the United States. W.E.B. Du Bois, an African-American scholar and civil rights activist, stated that race was, quote, the great test of the American socialist. Keller seemed to pass the test, though she did not ace it. She often spoke about the racism that pushed people of color to the margins of the economy, leaving them in poverty. In 1916, Keller was asked to endorse the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, formed just a few years earlier. She did, writing, this great republic of ours is a mockery when citizens in any section are denied the rights which the Constitution guarantees them, when they are openly evicted, terrorized, and lynched by prejudiced mobs, and their persecutors and murderers are allowed to walk abroad unpunished. How dare we call ourselves Christians? The outrages against the colored people are a denial of Christ. The central fire of his teaching is equality. Yet there are persons calling themselves Christians who profit from the economic degradation of their colored fellow countrymen. Now, Keller's family lived in Alabama. Her father had been a captain in the Confederate Army and later involved in the Ku Klux Klan. Her article supporting the NAACP was reprinted in the local Alabama paper while Keller was visiting her family there. They were outraged, and her mother demanded that she do something to keep the family in good standing. Keller wrote a statement to the local paper that qualified her argument, saying that she was advocating for equality under the law, not social equality. It was an unfortunate step back in her advocacy, though the statement fortunately did not appear to be widely published. Keller eventually left the Socialist Party because they were too moderate in their approach, and she joined the Industrial Workers of the World, a radical and more militant union. She felt that revolution would be more effective than gradual change. Keller would become more aligned with the Communist Party, though she never declared herself to be a communist. And in the era of McCarthyism, she was careful about her associations and words. This was not only for herself, but for her ability to continue to advocate for the blind. Keller's popularity and reputation as an innocent, disabled woman may have saved her, as she did have an FBI watch file, but was never publicly charged or asked to testify by the House Un-American Activities Committee. So I'll ask now to have the photo of Keller shown where she's an older woman with gray hair standing and holding open a large Braille book. Keller's legacy is somewhat complicated in the deaf and disability communities. Like many people did during her lifetime, Keller was a proponent of eugenics, which was the idea that the human race should be improved by not allowing the procreation of people with disabilities or specific characteristics. As she got older, she seemed to separate herself from the movement, and she spoke out about the Nazis' effort to eradicate people with disabilities as well as Jews. Her friendship with Alexander Graham Bell and her efforts to verbally speak led to some in the deaf community feeling that Keller was not an ally. Bell was a major factor in the language deprivation of generations of deaf people due to him establishing schools for the deaf where he forbade them to sign, forcing them to speak and read lips. He thought this would prevent the deaf from socializing together and having more deaf children. Helen Keller died in 1968 at the age of 87. Her legacy is greater than a disabled wonder child who left us with numerous inspirational quotes. She is a woman of her time who saw religion as the science of love, committing herself more to acts of good than specific beliefs. This led her to using her fame to give voice to those who are blind, poor, or marginalized. I will end with one of her inspirational quotes. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. Now, Dan will lead us in our stewardship moment.
Thank you, Edris. When I became a worship associate, Reverend Larry shared with us, all of us associates, this great collection of testimonials, a lot of uh, very kind words about our faith. And I wanted to share with you the shortest that is in this collection, and perhaps the most offbeat one, I would say, because it really spoke to me this week. And this is from David McBreen, called The Ultimate Fighting Church. My life as I know it stopped in May of 2002. I was arrested and lost the best friends I ever had, my children. I had already lost their mother prior to this, my other best friend. I was suffering from everything from OCD and major depression to PTSD and then some. At that time, I had a cellie. For the uninitiated, that's a cellmate. At that time, I had a cellie who introduced me to the Unitarian Universalist faith. I grew up Roman Catholic. I then realized how many religions there are. I opened my mind thanks to the Church of the Larger Fellowship. I now believe that when the gates of paradise are open to us, they will have bleachers on each side with all the different faiths cheering on those that have made it. To me, UUs are fighting for all faiths. I call them the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Church. We are all trying to get to the same place. Some of us just take different paths to get there. It's where we are in the end that counts. Love you all. So now more than ever, I really feel we need the Ultimate Fighting Church staying strong. And there are many ways you can contribute to this fight, and those will be displayed on the screen during the offertory music. Now, if you could all please join me from your homes in dedicating our offering to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action. We dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
Thanks, Dan. Uh, our Google Drive is being a little slow to share one of the videos that I put together for today. So I'm just going to I'm going to share the ways to give, and also I just dropped the link, the URL to our giving page in the chat. And so I'll just put these up for a moment, and then we'll enjoy our offertory music.
Thank you, John.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know, 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 I know. I know, 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 I know this rose will open. I know my fear. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know my fear. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know my fear. I know my fear. I know my soul will unfurl my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. Soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. Soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open, 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 fear will open, open, soul will unfold its wings. I know this rose will open.
If you have a chalice at home, you can join me by extinguishing it to these words by Reverend Tandy Rogers. May your resistance be grounded in love. May you know when to rest and when to rise. May you remember that pushing back against harm is also a way of making space for beauty. Now feel free to join us as we sing the hymn As Tranquil Streams.
As tranquil
My final quote of Helen Keller. If you read her first autobiography close enough, she actually attributed it to Annie Sullivan. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. This concludes the service. Have a wonderful and warm day.